as we explore quantum body and beyond. Today I want to discuss, share, reflect with you on several mysteries that somehow seem entangled. The first is the mystery of death. The second is the mystery of memory and karma. The third is the mystery of mind, brain, and consciousness. And they're all tied together. Okay, so of course people ask, what happens to me after I die? Where do I go after I die? So let's see if we can explore this a little bit experientially. Close your eyes and use your mind right now to listen to the sound of a dog barking. Hear it in your consciousness. Now listen to a church bell in the middle of the night. Even imagine a church bell and listen to the sound. Now listen to a newborn baby crying. Now listen to the sound of thunder and lightning. Okay, now let's see some images. So imagine looking at a starlit sky, a full moon. Imagine looking at a rainbow. Imagine looking at a green meadow. Imagine looking at snow-clad mountains. These are some of my favorites. Imagine looking at a green meadow, all in your mind. Let's try some sensations that pertain to touch. So imagine touching the rough bark of a tree. Imagine touching the skin of a newborn baby. Imagine touching ice. Imagine walking barefoot and feeling the heat on a hot day, walking barefoot on the beach. Imagine tasting strawberries, a lemon, Chinese food. Imagine the smell of lavender, or the smell of an Italian kitchen, or the smell of the locker room in your gym. Okay, I'll stop there. But you had some experience when I asked you to hear a sound, let's say the sound of an ambulance, siren. You heard something, but there was no sound in your brain, and there was no sound anywhere except that you heard the sound. Okay, so where was the sound? In your consciousness. And when I said imagine looking at a rainbow, where was the image? In your consciousness, nothing in your brain. Okay, so every experience that you just had, as I enumerated those experiences, all I had to use the word and you had an experience, right? So every experience you just had was a memory. If you had never seen a sunset on the ocean, very difficult to imagine, or even if you had not seen a picture of a sunset, or if you had never heard the sound of an ambulance, then you wouldn't be able to imagine it. So everything that you imagined just now is some form of a memory that you actually experienced, or you saw a movie, you saw a picture, but it is a memory. Now let me ask you what you had for dinner last night, and suddenly you say pizza or chicken sandwich, and you then remember the experience, how it tasted, where you were, who you were with. Okay. Now I say, okay, instead of imagining what you had last night, imagine or remember what you did 5 minutes ago. Okay. And then, maybe you were on the phone speaking to your friend, that comes up, that image comes up, the sound comes up, the situation comes up, the feeling comes up, the relationship comes up. So you're retrieving memories. Now think of some episode in your childhood. Imagine the room that you lived in, the toys that you had, your parents, your siblings. Some pictures show up, some sounds show up, some smells sometimes show up. Baking bread, your mother cooking in the kitchen. So, where are these memories? Before I ask you the question, I've talked to many neuroscientists and they all have their theories. But one thing we can say is there's no part of the brain that stores these memories. When you recall the memories, then many neural networks start to fire together, associations and so on. Those are the neural correlates of that memory. But where is the memory before I ask you the question? You can't find it in the brain. Okay, so it can only be in one place because, first of all, those images don't exist till you retrieve them. They don't exist till you retrieve them. Those sounds don't exist till you retrieve them, and then you personally experience them and no one else. And actually, there are no pictures or sounds or textures or tastes anywhere to be experienced. So, where is memory before you retrieve it? And who is the you that retrieves the memory simply by having an intention? And of course, memories fade out sometimes. They appear ephemeral, transient, flickers, wisps of memory, threads of desire flickering in. Even yesterday, right now, is a flicker. Faint memories of yesterday. Unless you really focus, then you can recall most of it, but otherwise flickers. By the end of the day, today, what happened during the day will be flickers, wisps of desire, threads of memory, past experiences. These threads of memory and past experiences are stored in your consciousness as residues of experience. These residues of experience are called karma. And then, of course, they generate memories, imagination, desires, and then they recycle as everyday experience here. But even this, what I see, is a lucid dream in a vivid now. By the time you hear these words, they're gone. And then if I ask you, what did I say? You have to remember. Okay, so everything you see is also a memory. You can't recognize Deepak until you know it's Deepak. And why do you know it's Deepak? Because you experienced him in some form or the other, even the voice, the image. Even though the image has been changing since I was born, there's an archetypal kind of fuzzy basic architecture that says, oh, that's Deepak. He looks older than he was a boy. But even what we call everyday reality, looking at these, you'd say that those are paintings because you know what a painting is because of memory. Okay. You know what a book is because of memory. Otherwise, it's just a sensation. So where are these memories before you recall them? And the only answer is they're in consciousness. They're not in your brain. The brain helps you. The brain is the neural network that correlates with the retrieval of the memory. Who retrieves the memory? Where does it exist before you retrieve it? Here's my thesis. The memory doesn't exist as a memory till you retrieve it. And what it exists is a potential memory, a residue of memory in a matrix of memories. Okay. So where do you go to retrieve a thought? Where do you go to retrieve an image? You go to yourself. Yourself is that formless consciousness. So where do you go after you die? Okay. Where you go after you die is where you are now. You can't have any experience without that consciousness at the back of all these memories and desires and instincts and drives and images. At the back of this is a formless consciousness which holds these memories as residues for the recycling of experience. So you don't go anywhere. You're there now. You are there now. And you go to the same place to create a memory as you go to create a perception, that perception, this perception, this perception. And that place is formless, eternal, and is there now. You never left it. In fact, you can't have an experience without going back home, which is that domain of infinite, formless, fundamental, irreducible, incomprehensible domain of possibilities where wisps of memory, threads of desire, karma, experiences, relationships, contexts, meanings, and stories all coexist right now. If you totally get this, then you don't die, and you're never born. In fact, you're eternally now, and from that eternal now, you can retrieve past, present, perceptual experience, and future imagined or desired experience. Never born and never gone. Just remember that. And therefore, birth and death are actually human constructs for the retrieval of memories from a place which is beyond birth and death and which is eternally now. Think about this. Let me know this is the conquest of death.